All right, Sue. Here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. I am thrilled to have as my guest today, Dr. Sue Johnson. Sue, welcome to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
So Dr. Sue Johnson is a leading innovator in the field of couple therapy and adult attachment. She's a primary developer of emotionally focused couples and family therapy, or EFT, which has demonstrated its effectiveness in over 30 years of peer-reviewed clinical research. She's the author of numerous books, including Hold Me Tight, the Hold Me Tight Workbook, and Love Sense. Sue's received numerous awards acknowledging her development of EFT, including the APA's Family Psychologist of the Year in 2016 and the Order of Canada in 2017. All right, Sue. Welcome. Great to have you here. My gosh, obviously you're someone I've been wanting to have on this podcast forever. So it's really a thrill and an honor to have you joining me today.
Hey, I'm delighted to be here. Okay.
So before we get going, share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
You mean actually where I am? I'm on the west coast of Canada in Victoria.
Okay.
It's raining, and it'll probably be raining for the next 6 months. But
oh boy,
it's the most beautiful place to live in the world. And I'm Canadian, but our work is really international. We teach in 40 countries. It's gone all over the world. We have centers all over the world. We have 90 centers.
Oh my gosh.
Teach my stuff. And Hold Me Tight, which is the book for the public. I just can't believe it. It's just done it again. It's translated everywhere, and it seems to be helping couples around the world to create good relationships. It basically, I think, because it actually gives a picture of what a good relationship looks like and how to actually get there, which in all our nonsense about relationships in our present world, I think people are very hungry for that. So I'm all over the place, but I live here in the beautiful forests and the mountains and the sea in Victoria.
Awesome. I'm really excited to get to talking about that. I mean, you said something that really struck me, talking about relationships and how to get there, but we will get to that. But first, Sue, how did this start for you? That's obviously a passion. I want to hear how things started for you.
Oh, well, I was doing my doctorate, and I had very clear ideas. I knew, for example, that from my point of view, most of psychotherapy didn't use the most powerful thing in the room, which is emotion. Emotion is the core organizing feature that puts together, structures your inner experience and the way you dance with others. And really, I think psychotherapy has been quite ambivalent about emotion. Most psychotherapy is about coping with it and seeing it as an enemy. And I was always very clear that it was powerful, that it was the heart of everything, and that the only way to get real change, not just a few symptoms here and there, real change was to go into this emotion, understand it, and work with it. So I had biases. I was Rogerian. I believed in non-pathologizing and listening to people. I believed that people had very good reasons for what they did. I just had to find the logic and the order in that. So I had some biases. But basically, I'd done almost every other kind of therapy, and I started working with couples. And I found that I was completely ineffective. And so I thought, wait a minute. Right. So, when you're a graduate student, you think everything is in the library if you can just find it. Well, I went all over the library, and I read everything on love, marriage, and it was all rubbish. Okay. It didn't help me at all. And people said, oh, you teach your couples communication skills. Well, the trouble with that is you can only use them when you're not all hot under the collar and freaked out of your mind, right? So it doesn't really work. So I just got desperate and decided to tape all my sessions. My sweet couples allowed me to. And I became this maniac.
No.
I was a maniac graduate student. Okay. I was gone. Okay. I became this maniac graduate student, watching tapes again and again and again. And it was amazing. It became very clear to me that, of course, there's a structure to relationships. Of course, there's a structure to our emotions and how we communicate. And look, you can see these patterns, and you can see that some patterns lead people into desperation and loneliness and isolation and anger and shutdown. And there are other patterns that lead people out into more openness, more balance, more connection. And I started working with these patterns.
Okay,
And then,
let me pause you right there. So get specific. What do you mean patterns of emotion that lead people out? Give me an example.
well, for example, if you look at most distressed couples in North America, particularly couples that are working with trauma, and we see over the years, I've seen many, many, many couples working with trauma, okay? If you look at them in North America, mostly what they're caught in is what we call blame withdrawal. One person is getting angry and saying, you don't talk to me, where are you, what's wrong with you, how come you don't do this? The other person is defending and shutting down. The more they shut down, the angrier the other person gets. I mean, that's a very simple way to describe it. But if you look, you can look at that 1,000 ways, communication skills. I wouldn't do that. I'm an attachment theorist. I believe in attachment science, which is in the last 20 years has basically told us who we are very clearly. And I think you need that as a guide to any kind of good therapy. And what attachment says is, yes, on one level, this is about, irritation and shutdown. But actually, if you really listen, there's desperate emotional priorities going on there, where one person is really saying, if you really understand attachment, one person is saying, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? I'll force you to respond to me. Where are you? Where are you? Because if you don't respond, I don't matter. I'm alone and we don't have a relationship. And I'm massively unsafe because I'm a bonding social human being. And I need to know you respond to me. That's my main survival cue in the world. And so I'm screaming, where are you? But it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like, you never, right? Mm-hmm. And the other person is saying, I'm rejected, I'm not wanted, I'm a failure, I can't do this, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, I'll just hunker down and wait for it to stop, I'll shut her out, I'll shut down. And of course, the more that person shuts down, the more alone and desperate the other person feels. If you are dealing with trauma at the same time, I invite you to think about the fact that what attachment science says is that emotional isolation is iatrogenic for human beings. We're not wired for it. We can't do it, basically. We're lousy at it. But if you add a few demons in there, emotional isolation, and you feel helpless, your main survival code is to call for others and have them come, and no one's coming, you're all alone. If you also have some demons in the room that are hijacking your brain, that are telling you the whole world is dangerous, that are telling you that there's no solution to this vulnerability, well, then you're in a total existential pickle, and you do really desperate things. Like, as I told the Canadian Army, and they basically believed me, which was great. As I told the Canadian Army, they said, well, we want you to help us with our families because we don't want our soldiers to commit suicide. I said, do you understand that I think in those days, I don't know what it is now, 80% of our soldiers commit suicide in the 2 weeks after their partner has left them. And do you understand that you set up their partner leaving them? And of course, these guys looked at me like I was a lemon, okay? I said, you don't help them. You don't even help the partners understand that the man who goes away on deployment is not necessarily the man who comes back. You don't help the partner know how to respond. The partner just says, are you? This nice guy went on deployment, and now you're like freaked out, a hypersensitive, angry, or numb. Who the hell are you? And of course, nobody helps. So the best predictor of recovery from trauma by far, and this is a lot of what I say sounds like opinion. Please believe me, it's not. It's research. The best predictor of recovery from trauma is a secure connection with another person that you can turn to that gives you a safe haven, secure base. And we knew that with our couples. We worked with trauma couples for years. Recently, I've gone into the field of individual therapy. We do EFIT, emotionally focused individual therapy. A primer came out last year, the primer in EFIT. And we focus a lot on trauma, because even though I've been known as a couples therapist, I and my colleagues have always seen traumatized individuals. For me, particularly war vets, but also particularly complex PTSD, where people have been so abused in their childhood that it isn't just a wound. Trauma comes from the Latin word to wound. It isn't just a wound. It's a wound that has interfered with their basic ability to develop any kind of balanced sense of self, any kind of competent sense of self, any ability to regulate their emotions. It's interfered with those developmental processes. So as they go through life, they're caught, and we call it the trauma trap. They're caught in not knowing how to regulate their overwhelming emotion, because PTSD is basically an emotional disorder. That's what it is. Not knowing how to regulate their overwhelming emotions, and doing it in dysfunctional ways that then make everything worse and feed back into the trauma. Addiction is one of them. But this is a trap. The way you protect yourself, because you've never really had any balanced, safe place to learn about who you are and to learn how to befriend your emotions and deal with them and order them and use them as a compass. The way you protect yourself becomes a prison, which feeds right back into your trauma. And that's what happens with distressed couples. The way they protect themselves, getting angry, shutting down, feeds right back into how alone they both feel and how desperate they both feel, and their negative behaviors, right? So
let me jump in here for a second. So, you were talking about, you provided an example of the couple in the room and them kind of talking and kind of getting angry and maybe yelling, going back and forth. And you said something, some people, this could be viewed many ways. One could view it as an imperfect communication, and we need to adjust how they're communicating. And I thought that was really interesting. And then you looked at it through the EFT lens. But when you're working with a couple and you're looking at them with this EFT lens, I'm curious, what attracted them in the first place? Was it their kind of need for each other's the way they dealt with their own emotions, like they needed that other person, but now here they are maybe several years down the road, and it's that exactly that's causing them to have this kind of difficulty and so forth?
No, I don't think of it like that. I think of it that we all have the same, attachment tells us we all have the same basic needs and fears as human beings. We all need to connect. We all need to know that if we call, someone will come. Someone who sees us, who cares about us, who we're important to. We all need to know. So falling in love is kind of sexual attraction is very useful. But falling in love is sort of a universal thing that we all do, seeking this emotional connection with another human being. And then I think you're in a dance and you're playing emotional music, and maybe you've never even seen what a good relationship looks like. You don't even know what a good relationship looks like. You're just you're just playing the emotional music, you know, and you hurt each other and you alienate each other and things go wrong and you get stuck. And we all get stuck. We all get stuck in relationships. We all get stuck in life in dealing with our basic, overwhelming vulnerability. You know, we have brains that don't like uncertainty and unpredictability and no solution vulnerability. So we're always seeking ways out of that. So I think it's just kind of a natural thing. I think that the thing that distresses me a bit is that even though Hold Me Tight is so successful, and we have Hold Me Tight, we have the Hold Me Tight online program, www.holdmetightonline, that you can do in your own home with your partner, and it's used all over the world. Even so, I think people are starving for connection in our world. We're lonelier and lonelier and more depressed. And really, as far as I'm concerned, we should be teaching attachment in school. We should be looking at teaching kids in school how to build communities, how to reach for each other, how to support each other. And we should be showing pictures of what a good relationship looks like. And if you look at our world, my goodness me, most 11-year-old kids get exposed to porn. Are you kidding? Like, and this is when they're impressionable as hell. You know, it's not about misinformation. It's about, from my point of view as a relationship orientated therapist, it's about toxic lies. And people are saying, tell me what a good relationship looks like. Tell me how to get there. And instead we give them, things like, well, you can't have good sex if you're very familiar with somebody. This is nonsense. This is a lie. The research says the opposite. But the people who have the best sex are the people who are happy in long-term relationships. So, you know, there's so much rubbish out there. We just get confused and lost. And
well, let's talk about what does a good, I mean, obviously there are many examples, but what does a good relationship look like? What does a healthy relationship look like?
It's a secure bond.
A secure bond.
And all the research says, if you have a secure bond, even with just one person, you are more resilient to trauma, you are more resilient to stress, you are healthier, you feel better about yourself, you have a more competent sense of who you are. It goes on and on and on. It's associated with every mental health good thing that you can imagine, okay? But what it basically looks like, and we do it in our therapy, we create these, what we call Hold Me Tight conversations. We help people show how they freak each other out and how they get stuck in these negative patterns. And then we blame the pattern, not them. We say, oh, you're both caught up in this dance, and for very good reasons. And then they start to see the pattern and they start to not demonize each other. Then when there's a certain sense of safety and balance, we go in and we help them take risks. And what it basically means, a Hold Me Tight conversation, is that you feel safe enough with another person that you can go in and touch your emotions, your vulnerability, and you can go in and make sense of it, and you can share that. You can reach to the other person in a way that pulls that person close to you. So, you know, the woman who's screaming and yelling at her partner, and he's got PTSD, so when she screams and yells at him, he's absolutely on the ceiling. She's screaming and yelling at her partner. She's able, in our therapy and in the Hold Me Tight conversations, to turn and say to him, well, I do scream at you, I do. I get so desperate. I'm so desperate. I feel so alone here. I feel like I've lost you already. Like you don't need me and you don't see me. And I get so scared. I don't know what to do. So I scream and yell at you and get mad, and I don't know what to do. I'm just so scared. And her partner, who's never heard this, sometimes the partner needs help to like, what? Who? Wait a minute, what? Who are you? Right. Like, but the partner is like, if we've done our job right, the partner is moved, open, and says, I don't want you to be scared. I didn't know you felt that way. I don't want you to be scared. What do you need? And, you know, we're basic as human beings. The woman bursts into tears and says, I need to know I matter to you. And he weeps and he says, the reason I shut down so quickly is because you're the most important thing in the world to me and you matter so much. If you translate this into individual therapy for trauma, often what you will find us doing in therapy, and I've talked about this in the primer for EFIT, you will see us going in and helping the adult, competent person who's in the session with you, who the therapist has resourced and helped to feel strong, going in and talking to the traumatized child, you know, and doing the same thing. Like my latest war vet, I remember saying to him, so all this terrible shaming, terrible things you say to yourself really started at 11. Can you see little 11-year-old Tao? And first of all, he's in his head. He doesn't want to go there. He says, therapists are stupid. They're always persuading me to think something else when what I think is true. Okay, I said, I understand. Can you see little 11-year-old, nevertheless, can you see little 11-year-old Tao? I want him on an emotional level because there I can move him. And he says, no, I can't see him. No, I don't see his face. He's a ghost. No, I can't see it. Well, we move and walk around. So you can't see him? Oh, I think I can see him. It seems to me he's, you know, so gradually, I say, can you see little 11-year-old Tao? He says, yes, I can see him. I said, okay. So here he is. He's scared and he's trying so hard to please his father and his brother and his mother, and they all want different things, and he's lost and he's scared and he doesn't fit in and he's lost and he's telling himself what these dreadful things, like he's a traitor and he's disgusting. Right. What does little 11-year-old Tao feel? And this great big guy who's resisted me for 10 sessions and told, you have to work to resist me for 10 sessions, believe me. So, and this great big guy who's resisted me for 10 sessions stops. Thank goodness. He doesn't say, I'm in a deep existential crisis. You don't seem to understand. Yes, I understand. Let's go and look at little 11-year-old Tao. Finally, he stops and he says, he feels sad. I say, yes, he feels sad. And we stay there and we walk around in that. And I say, what would you like to do to help him? He said, I don't know. Nobody ever helped him. Because self-compassion for this man is like foreign. He doesn't even know what it looks like. Okay. So he beats himself up all the time. Finally, he says, what people always say, we're a human family. Okay. There's a map to human beings. It's called attachment. And in all our research, we've done so much research over the last 30 years. I've got a map when I'm in therapy, so I know where I'm going. I say, what would he like to do? And this man, this great, big, self-denigrating, tough man says, he holds him. You say, yes. And you go in and hold him? And can he tell you? It feels good to be held. This is like the couples process. It's the same, but it's with parts of self, right? With the most vulnerable part of self and the self that can have the resources to comfort and hold and order. And so he goes in and he holds him. And, you know, that man moved. He moved from constant rage to being hijacked all the time, to not being able to relate to his family, to depression. I mean, depression goes hand in hand with PTSD. We know that. He moved into balance and into self-compassion. If you know how to work with emotion, if you have a map, this is the essence of EFT, whether you're working with couples or individuals, especially in trauma. If you know how to work with emotion and you have a map to where you're going, it is so powerful. our research says you can create so much profound change in such a short time. I mean, we have 30 years of research on couples.
If I may, Sue, it feels, listening to you talk, it feels like you're describing bringing the person back to true north in a sense.
Yes, that's a nice image. That's a nice image. That's a lovely image.
Yeah, it feels like you're kind of realigning their soul, the organism. Why do we stray from, why are we shooting this bickering and fighting, and below that is the longing for attachment, the lost attachment, the unattached? Why are we straying from that? Why do we not want to, or why are we hiding that in a sense?
Well, we're complicated human beings, and our society hasn't exactly validated. Our society still says a strong adult is independent, able to be separate, making choices on their own, and able to put their emotions aside. This is horse shit. Okay, that's not a strong adult. That's somebody waiting to be knocked off their perch. A strong adult, from an attachment point of view, because attachment is a developmental theory of personality that is also totally useful for the therapist. From an attachment point of view, a whole secure person who has a secure relationship with themselves and with others, and so can keep their balance in the world and deal with whatever's happening. A whole secure person knows they're vulnerable, knows what that vulnerability looks like, accepts it, says, well, I'm a human being. Human beings do not do well alone. They're not wired for it. Your nervous system isn't wired for it. It's not because you're weak or strong. You're just not wired for it. You're a social bonding animal, okay? So really strong human beings who are resilient to trauma, and the research on this is huge, knows their vulnerabilities, can accept them and cope with them, and can tune into their own emotions, trust their emotions as a compass, befriend them, listen to them, order them, and can tune into other people and turn to other people as a resource. They can reach for other people. They can reach, Tal now can reach when he starts to blame himself. He can find that secure adult part of him that he found in therapy with me, and he can turn and comfort that little 11-year-old boy, instead of saying, oh, that little 11-year-old boy, I can't see him. He doesn't exist. He's a ghost. He's a ghost. He doesn't matter. He was the traitor. He was the, no. That little 11-year-old boy is a valuable part of you. It's a sad part of you. It's the part of you that never got seen. So of course you can't see you. Why would you be able to see you? Nobody ever saw you, did they? Tal, nobody ever saw you for the first 20 years of your life. You spent your whole life desperately trying to carve yourself into the image of what your family wanted. And they all wanted different things, of course, which is, that's crazy making, right? That's complex PTSD, right? His brother wanted him to be the national hero in the army. His father wanted him to be shut down and compliant and never ask for anything. His mother wanted him to be a child, constantly dependent on her, never leaving her, hanging on to her. Well, this young boy, just most of the time, if you listen to him, he was alone. He spent his whole childhood playing video games to get out of all this. But he can't, in the beginning, he can't even formulate these things, right? So many of us walk around really not knowing who we are on an emotional level until something traumatic happens to us that knocks us off. So our society doesn't give us a healthy view of what human beings are. It doesn't give us a healthy view of relationships. And we get lost and stuck. Relationships are complicated. Your emotions are complicated. Life's complicated. It takes over us all. And we all get stuck. We all get stuck. therapists get stuck. You know, I mean, here I am talking to you, and I can tell you, you know, an incident. I use it when I teach, where, you know, I had the most enormous, terrible, embarrassing fight with my 7-year-old son on a Saturday morning in Starbucks in my local community, where everybody knew who I was. Well, you can say, well, so you know better than that. No, actually, I don't, because I got real upset and I lost it and I attacked him. And then the whole thing went to hell. And I'm just caught in the emotional dance, because I'm a human being, and my emotions are the most powerful thing, right? They color my world. They organize my thoughts. They organize my actions. And if I can't befriend them and make sense of them, I'm in trouble. So, you know, the therapist, you know, starts screaming at my son in Starbucks on Saturday morning, because I'm a human being. And
Right.
but I have to tell you, we resolved it, which is wonderful. And we resolved it. My son, who had, bless him, my son turned around after the fight and said to me, "Hey, Mum, that conversation didn't go too well, did it?" And then I started in a different place. I started with the desperation and the vulnerability instead of the "why are you?"
Right.
I started with, "I'm terrified that you're failing your whole school. I'm terrified and you won't talk to me about it, and I don't know what to do about it, and I feel helpless." I started there. And we had a whole different kind of conversation, because I'm what we call ARE, accessible, responsive, and engaged. That's what a good relationship looks like. I'm opening up to him. I'm reaching for him. And he said, "Oh," he said, "well, actually, I've already failed everything. So maybe I should have told you. And I'm scared to death too. So we're both scared." The interesting thing is, when we're both scared and we know that, by the time we walked 6 blocks to get home, we'd resolved the whole thing and made a plan for the future. Whereas for 18 months before that, we could hardly talk to each other, because I would always start with, "Excuse me, I don't think you've done your homework," right? And he would roll his eyes, and I would say, "Oh, you know, just roll your eyes. You know, I'm just your mother. You know, what do I matter?" And we're off, right? We're off. But we're sensitive, and nobody really teaches us how to use our emotions or listen to them. Nobody really teaches us how to connect. I mean, right now, personally, I think we're in the most disastrous social experiment in human history. We're actually teaching kids not to look at faces, but to stare at screens. I do not know what we think is going to happen, but I think it's going to be a complete disaster. It's the opposite of what we should be doing. If we want healthy human beings who can deal with difficult, traumatic experiences, this is not the way to go. But that's, hey, we're a capitalist society. This is the way to make money. This is the way we're going. So, you know.
Let me ask you this, Sue, as we kind of wind down here. You said so many things that I've got to have you back, because there's so much to talk about. But is it possible for, you know, I'm thinking about our listeners here who are listening to this, and we're kind of talking about relationships here. Is it possible for one person in the relationship to be accessible? That you said that you use that ARE. What is this going on here? Use that
It's balloons.
R acronym: accessible, relatable.
Accessible, responsive, and engaged. Are you there for me? Are you there for me is the big question in all relationships. Are you there for me? If the answer is no, everything starts to go sideways. So that's the big question. So yeah, ARE. Is it possible for one person to be ARE and the other person not?
Well, is it and to have a successful relationship?
Well, no. I mean, at various times, people will be more accessible and responsive than others. You know, I've been married to my partner for 36 years. At various times, I might be more open than him. However, there's a certain point where if I'm really going to make a bid for his attention and caring, I need him to be able to respond. So I can't do a relationship on my own. It's a dance. It's a dance, and it's around dealing with your fears, vulnerabilities, and needs and longings in a way that pulls the other person close rather than pushing them away. And that makes you stronger, of course. But no, people have to be able to at least join their partner in that dance to a certain extent. You know, people have different levels. I need, I mean, you know, look at all my work. I need a more accessible, responsive, engaged man than many, many, many women do. I do. So it's jolly good that I married one, right? Although I don't think you'd mind me saying we've both changed a lot and we've both grown each other up. And I'm not sure. I think the first couple of years, we weren't that good at it. We didn't know each other very well. We got married very fast. And the first couple of years were rather rocky. But we've gone through a lot of trauma together. And in those traumatic, overwhelming experiences where we lose our balance, we've always been able to be there for each other. And that builds inner strength in each of us, and it builds a good relationship.
So as we kind of close out here, what's the best way for people to learn more about your work?
You can look at my website, drsuejohnson.com. You can look at the ICEFT website, which is, I'm director of the International Center for Excellence in Emotionally Focused Therapy. That's www.iceeft.com. You can find all our research there. There's 30 years of research. We've researched everything you can imagine. We can show you what needs to happen in therapy, how you can do it as a therapist, and we can show you that these are the results and this is what it looks like 3 years later. So there's all this research and resources for therapists, courses. We teach a lot with PESI, but we also have all kinds of courses on the ICEF site. You can look for my books. There's lots of little YouTubes out there. I'm always shocked. Some of them look kind of weird. I look like the Queen, which I don't like. I don't like that. But anyway, because I'm anti-monarchy, I don't want to look like the Queen. Okay. So, but you know, you can find a lot of stuff on the internet.
Okay, we'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at thetraumatherapistpodcast.com. So thrilled to have you here. You are so inspiring. I mean, and obviously so passionate about your work. And thank you so much for being here.
You're most welcome. It was really fun.
All right, take care.
Okay.